Carmichael, who is the founder and CEO of My Sex Bio, otherwise known as My Sexual Biography. Join us to have a conversation called Goodbye, Shame, Silence, and Misogyny, and Hello, Real, Nuanced, and Pleasure-Focused Sexual Education. So today I wanted to share about like your organization and all the educational information that you provide, and just since also in the ways that we overlap and share a similar mission and wanting to make sure people can really have the truth and more nuanced conversations about our bodies, about our sexual health and relationships. And I know that people often ask me, I don't know if you get this question, but I've often gotten the question. It's like, what led you to decide to go into sex therapy and sexual health? But, even the question itself insinuates like, you're weird or wrong. I don't go up to people and be like, now, why did you decide to become an accountant? What really was going on there with you? Right.
Mm-hmm.
So what was it for you though?
So mine, I'll be really honest, mine was mostly by accident. I've always had an interest in sex education, realizing that there's a great need for it. But how my sex bio came to be was really a collision of, at this point, I just see it as fate. But in the moment, it was like, oh, well, here's a random opportunity. What if we say yes to that? I wonder what road that will lead down. And funny enough, it was while I was traveling. I was on a different trip with the same organization that we met through, and met someone on a summit through them that I was on, and we started talking about sexual education and their interest in it. And I was like, I'm interested in that too. How could we maybe support one another? And we started coming up with this idea, and we piloted it in Switzerland, where this other person was living, and I later moved to. And they ended up wanting to focus on other career goals. But as I talked with more people about this idea of a sexual biography and what that is and how that is not something that we explore in our own biographies and selves. So we have a story. So it's basically your sexual story. Mm-hmm. We have a biography of all these other parts of our life. We have it for our career, for our family, for our relationships, even for like our clothing and hairstyle changes. We reflect upon these aspects of our life, of our story. We set goals. We see if our trajectory is in alignment with those goals. And if they're not, we shift our path. But we don't reflect upon and consider goals or seeing if we need to make changes to our sexual story, to our sexual self. So as I started talking about this and kind of sussing out this idea, I realized that it really got me pretty excited and juiced. So I slowly made it more and more formal. But that's to say, it was largely by a collision of fates and accident that things came together. Yeah. And I've just since kind of dove all in. And unlike you, I don't have, a professional or educational background in this. So there was definitely a period of time where it was like, who am I to try to bring information forward? I don't have a degree. I'm just a passionate human. And then I started realizing, okay, that's fine. But there's plenty of people who don't necessarily have degrees in things who still bring to light and pull together resources. And as I realized that, and I realized it's okay if I don't, I can just be the conduit, help be the conduit, or, the organization, not me, of pulling together experts. Because at this point in my life, like I'm never going to be able to carry all that information. And we talk about a lot. So I just never be the holder of it all. So anyway, that's long story short.
I'm just grateful to anybody who is really having these really mature conversations around our bodies and sexual health. And so, it's and we're in different roles in the fact that I do one-on-one and couples therapy, but you know, we're also really about getting out a really important message. I mean, that's part of why I wrote my book, is because not everybody has the time or inclination to go to therapy. It's a privileged activity for a lot of people. So for me, writing the book was, here's like at a much lower price point some ways to have conversations about body shame, or about how we don't even know what our body's like, or what it can do, or we don't give ourselves our pleasure, or we don't know how to have, you know, intimacy and communicate our wants and needs. I mean, we could go on and on, but all of that is, I think we're both really care about getting this message out that that sex, that pleasure, that intimacy, that sensuality, that, you know, different parts of our anatomy are not dirty words. They're not dirty concepts. And the longer that, you know, we treat them as such, and we only give some information, or it's only in certain kind of realms, and that is really the problem, not just our inherent natural, you know, being human with all that it entails as sexual beings.
Pleasure is our right.
Mm-hmm.
It is a carnal part of us, and the more that we create space and taboo and shame between a carnal place in us, the farther away we are from ourselves.
Mm-hmm.
And therefore the farther we are distanced in our partnerships and our relationships, or even just our friendships, because our sexuality doesn't just show up in the bedroom.
Mm-hmm.
It shows up in every aspect of our lives.
Right.
And
it's like such a key life force energy. It's and that's one thing that I, you know, pretty much the first maybe section of my book is a lot of criticizing the repression in the US, because we have had such a reductionist attitude about these words, and that we don't see all the different nuanced ways in which that sexual energy or erotic energy really is a powerful life force energy that can fuel creativity and deeper connection and authenticity. But it's I think, and part of why we haven't really been able to expand into that is because it is, you know, it is really a powerful energy, but also a really blissful one as well. So we think of it as like sex is like a missionary position in the bedroom, lights out at night with your spouse. And we kind of leave it at that. So much is left out. I mean, what would you say are maybe some of the kind of the main misconceptions that your organization has helped people to learn about, or the things that people have been most interested in and engaged with you on?
Oh, it's funny that you asked that also to what you just said, talking about how we put repression on certain words around sex education in the United States and across the globe. Not only are we doing that, we're not giving words. We don't give accurate, medically accurate words or ways to ask or convey what we want and need, or how to say no or consent. We literally don't even give the words to have the conversations.
Right.
So of course we can't communicate to one another what our desires and how we can gain pleasure. Like we don't have the verbiage for it.
Right.
It shouldn't surprise us. I mean, so there's like basic steps that we have to build up to, you know, like.
Well, that's why I really am such a champion of the word bodyfulness, because we haven't had a word that really encompassed this sense of like, when we are connected to our body and we have self-regulation practices to feel balanced and grounded and trust our body and feel confident in our body, that we're then able to go to that next level of really owning our right to pleasure and being able to have deeper connections, and sort of, because we definitely hear about mindfulness all the time, and that's just, it's sort of limiting and just not kind of the full story and what we need. And so I think it's interesting that we lack words in our English language that do encompass like all the different layers of certain aspects of our being, especially as sexual beings.
Yeah. And we've quoted you a number of times on our page. But one of the quotes that I think is relevant to this, as well as it being one of my favorite quotes that we shared, it's you said, if we leave out the body and our well-being, we are leaving out a huge resource for resilience, healing, and pleasure. So like, if we're leaving out our body, we're just skipping an entire portion of ourselves. So like there has, to what you just said, like there's been a wonderful, great growing wave of mindfulness, of taking care of how we can zen and be in the moment and try to be that a little bit more, but we're still not connecting with ourselves, with our the rest of our body, and we need to.
Or we're connecting to awareness. I think that there's this real acceptance for, yes, be aware of your thoughts, be aware of your body, but still keep it sort of buttoned up, like kind of the now what, like to be primal, to be our animal selves, to express ourselves, to be like, even another dirty word is, oh, you're emotional. Well, yeah, of course I'm emotional. Human beings have emotions. Emotions are actually really helpful to guide us. They're really intelligent aspects. They're energy and motion. And so I do think that, it's unfortunate that we've had this split of the mind and the body, that and I think that a lot of what my work does in your organization is to say, wait a minute, wow, let's look at the body. Yes, mind and body, it's all one, and yet how is the body like uniquely sort of wise and resourceful and a portal to feeling good within, which we deserve, and sharing that enjoyment with other people. And what are all the things that have gotten in our way? And I know you guys do a good job, as well as just looking at like, gosh, these are some of the messages, or the shame, or this, we need to break that down because we're not bad or wrong for our desires.
Yes. Yeah. Our core mission is, we believe that sex education and empowerment is a vehicle for peace.
I love that.
Peace that starts in ourselves, it goes out into our relationships, and then continues out into our communities and world. Because when we are not sexually repressed, oppressed, or suppressed, we can more fully and honestly express ourselves.
Right.
And how basic is that when you think about it? Like just being able to show up honestly.
Yeah.
It seems like such a duh, but so many things between culture and religion and capitalism, like create these barriers keeping us from being able to just be honestly in our sexuality.
Right. Yeah. I read there's an article I read that talks about how sex is better in socialist countries because people aren't exhausted. People aren't in kind of the rat race and the comparison and so it's there's a lot of, we're caught up in some systems that gaslight us, and it's systemic. And so I think that there's so many avenues to go down too. And we think about sex as far as just our own pleasuring with other people, both emotional and physical intimacy, and also just basic reproductive aspects of our body, or hormones, or I don't know about you. I found that some of the like main things is people they don't even know themselves, let alone their bodies, and to even begin to trust their body. Do you find that there's sort of just any kind of major gaps, or what would be, if you would say, what the main sort of lack of awareness is around our bodies and sexual health that you've noticed?
Yeah, first thing that comes to mind is that lack of ability, because it's not it's never been brought forward before, of reflection. So that's a huge part of what we are about. So very much education. It's education with how can you reflect upon your sexual story, upon your sexual self? How can you give that reflection and care in order to see what you might want to change, or what you might want to explore, or what you might be saying yes to that actually you don't like, you're not like into that at all. You don't like that, like, so reflection of your sexual self. For us at My Sex Bio, that's core to what we are trying to put out there. And I see it as core to what people are missing, because it starts there, it's like that initial, like, I am blah, 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 like this is missing. Like you have to have an awareness that something is missing or not there. And then you can dive down the road of what that might look like if you were to explore it,
Yeah, and I think it's hard too because there's so much noise. I mean, even in this live right now, like there's alerts and dings and text. I mean,
Yep.
there's it's a literal and figurative noise. And so I think I mean, it's almost like a revolutionary act just to say, you know what, I'm going to stop and look inward. Like, what is my body telling me? My heartbeat, what is my intuition telling me? What is my temperature, my digestion? I think starts with some of that basic stuff of of your subtle body energy, and that it really it can unfold and lead to kind of more and more awareness of your limits, your boundaries, your yeses, your nos. But even I think before it's about sex, it's just about like what is my heart needing, my gut needing, my groin, all these different inner brains, and it's just a language that none of us really grew up. I shouldn't say none of us. Most of us didn't grow up appreciating and learning. I mean, as kids, I think we're tuned into it, and then we get pulled away from that. So it's almost like we have to relearn a new language as adults, right?
And even if you are or were blessed, lucky enough to have been given some of those tools and languages, just like all other parts of our biography and story, you can keep exploring it. So even if you have those foundational tools, it doesn't mean that suddenly there's a stopping point, and that's what's cool. Like, that's life. Like, welcome. Right. Like, there's a cornucopia of options. Let's play and explore.
Exactly.
But if you don't even know, if you don't know that that's an option, you can't.
It's changing, like the developing body. I mean, I think about let's just look at menopause alone as something that's silenced and nobody, talks about. Something that roughly 50% of the population goes through that people don't know much about. So it's a wonderful thing that we get to always keep growing and learning as far as our bodies and the changes in our bodies and how that influences our eroticism and sexual energy. So it can be enjoyable, but also I think if we weren't shrouded in sort of the lack of information about our bodies and something like menopause, we wouldn't have to just like trudge through and bushwhack to get to the information, right? It shouldn't be so challenging. I have a section in my book where I kind of compare to other countries and how other countries, talk with their children about all different types of pleasure. I mean, and throughout their lifespan. But one thing I'm noticing as I'm a more seasoned or vintage woman is that we're really rendered invisible as sexual beings, even more so once you get kind of over 45 or so. So I say F that.
Do you see that as a plus or a minus?
What, that we're rendered invisible?
And
I see
and as sexual beings.
Well, I mean, I see that as a problem. I see, for example, how there aren't conversations about menopause because it's just like, well, women and your bodies, you're not going to be, on the one hand, maybe not as objectified as much anymore, right? But then if we're told in our culture that our entire worth and value has to do with our outer form, then we're discarded and thrown away when the outer form isn't youthful, perky, lifted, pulled back. I mean, that I find is a real problem, is that especially because it's a time when a lot of women are actually coming into their owning their sexual pleasure and loving their body and saying, I don't care as much what other people think. Like, this is what I want. Like, one of the things I like to say is it kind of goes from a lot of women sort of aim to please in the bedroom until they aim to be pleased. Like that transition time. So in answer to your question, that's why I think kind of rendering this age range invisible, and with just the elderly in general, we don't really revere our elderly even when it comes to things that aren't about sex in the US.
Yeah. Each month we at My Sex Bio we explore a different theme, and I want to say it was April or so of 2019. We were looking at basically sex as you age. So something that is what you just said, really not discussed, not talked about at all, is how your sexuality doesn't just stop. It very much continues and can continue to evolve throughout your entire life. Mm-hmm. And we need to think about that. Just like we plan for other things.
It should continue. It should evolve. I mean, for better or for worse, I read a statistic that like the highest increase in STIs and sexually transmitted infections is actually, I think, between like 65 and 75. Now, granted, I mean, probably because they aren't getting the education either. But look, they're out
Yep.
there. They're of course they want pleasure too. Like you don't suddenly get your AARP card and decide you don't want pleasure anymore. But
Yeah.
yeah. I mean, and I think one of the questions I was going to ask you, just sort of along this topic of like the silencing of these really core human issues, is that I know you have in your handle, it's my sex bio, even though the full name is my sexual biography, right? And when I first joined Instagram professionally as pleasure expert, I learned from some other people in the kind of sexual health industry that they had to change their name because Instagram was hiding handles that had anything to do with pleasure and sex. But have you guys found that to be a problem? Have you been able to do well with your handle?
Yeah, so I'm going to not go on a total soapbox, but we've had 2 of our accounts shut down recently. We've had our studio account. So we also have I also want to give a shout out saying, yes, nursing homes have problems with STIs. We've talked with
Open Minds Fusion Studio.
Yes, we've definitely talked with people. We want to talk more about that as one of our themes as well. Yeah. So our studio account got shut down, and just recently our podcast account, Carnal Theory, was closed out by Instagram. So what that frustration and fire that has been lit under my ass is this, and just like general Facebook in general, very uninviting to promoting any educational content that uses the word sex, which is really sad and underlines what we've been talking about around disconnection and keeping underground any conversation around sex. We're not saying bad things. We are giving education just like any other educational institution is, but we can't run ads. Our posts can't be boosted. So what's interesting and there needs to be a movement
to stop censorship. I mean, it's censorship.
It is censorship. And that's exactly what I was going to say. Because at the end of the day, when corporations also censor educational conversation, what they are saying is that, yes, these things are dirty and wrong, which means we're going to keep putting these topics under the rug. Shame is going to grow. Taboos are going to build inside of us. And therefore, we are not getting closer to that internal peace. Like I was talking about, we believe that sex education and empowerment is a vehicle for peace. I know and believe this to be true. If we continue to be sexually repressed, oppressed, and suppressed, we will not be able to be fully here.
Or just feel safe. Think of the amount of sexual aggression that results out of the lack of education and misconceptions. I mean, we had that real brief focus in like kind of the Me Too. Let's look at some of this, the sexual violations and everything from microaggressions to macroaggressions. So it's like we have these fits and spurts, and I feel excited that especially some of the younger generations, as I guess Gen Xer, I don't know if we have done so much as younger generations that are now, I feel like really pushing the envelope on saying like, let's break down the heteronormative paradigm. Let's, stop all the binaries, and let's, like, this is silly.
It's unnecessary. It doesn't benefit anybody. It just puts up barriers and walls and confusions and doesn't allow people to be honest.
And it's like, yet, are we like a Little House on the Prairie or something? I love how my cat just showed up. Are we living back in like the Stone Age? Like what? Yeah. So it's
progress requires fighting sometimes, and that's okay. But some of those fights are going to need to include, like your question around Instagram and Facebook, are going to need to include the masses saying, no, it's not okay for this kind of content to be censored. It doesn't mean that hate speech, it doesn't mean that incorrect information, that shouldn't be able to be widely spread. I'm not saying that some limitations so that we can try to not go down the road of deep fakes. But when medically accurate, white paper researched information is censored, we are in trouble.
Absolutely.
It does not help us, benefit us, or elevate us.
Right.
And that should scare us.
I mean, and that's where I'm used to some of the judgment. I mean, if there's going to be judgment for sort of how I live my life and because both really my personal and professional life are really all one and the same message. I mean, I live my message, and there's pushback, there's judgment, whether it be your accounts being taken down or somebody just not wanting to associate you with you or be your friend. I mean, and I've had a couple people that haven't wanted to do lives with me, like influencers who they want to, it's okay, they'll talk about body positivity, but once you go from body positivity to like other aspects of being in your body that even start to encroach upon eroticism and sex, they're like, I've been told, I'm going to pass on doing an Instagram live with you because I don't want to be associated with somebody who is in the world of sexual health. And
Yep.
I mean, I'm happy that they're talking about body positivity, but it's only part of the story. Let's kind of break down to kind of our full expression. Because if you're going to have body positivity, but yet it stops once it comes to wanting to pleasure yourself or be physically intimate with someone else, it's like, okay, well, wait a minute, we're not integrated. We're not integrating ourselves, and then it comes out in misdirected ways. That's the other thing too. Repression just leads to like we were saying, more other problems as far as shame and aggression. So
and we're not recognizing where those barriers, where that shame lies. And I also want to give a shout out to if Style Writer. Thank you for joining. Sex education can and will lead to better body positivity. Yes. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And abuse and assaults, couldn't agree with that more.
Because if you think about it, I mean, safety is the foundation to really owning a lot of our pleasure. And if we're living in a world in which there's hatred towards women, then what kind of just foundation of safety and security and stability can we have in order to open up? And that's part of the patriarchy. It's like, it's very intentional to say, let's do what we can to prevent you from, whether we're going to have you feel unsafe or have you really distracted by spending time on waxing and liposuction and hating your cellulite, then whatever we can do to prevent you from like really stepping into your power and owning your sexual power. So just keep breaking that down. Hopefully maybe somebody from Instagram and Facebook is listening to this and saying, you know what? Yes, let's put the accounts in the algorithm that have to do with sexual health, sexual health and wellness.
And a lot of what you just talked about at systemic levels is what we get into in some of our classes. So at the My Sex Bio Studio, we have classes, Fucking Capitalism, which dives into looking at the intersection of our sexuality and capitalism and how that has an influence over ourselves. That's an ongoing class. And also the lecture parts are up on our YouTube, but also just education in general around how we can look at our, better understand our pleasure. And so we have various classes on that as well. And I know that your book dives into resources and how people can start to relate to themselves better. These are resources that no different than a good managing guidebook, all these self-help books that are really, in the spotlight and catchy right now. Like, this is a carnal core piece to ourselves. Mm-hmm. You are invited to explore this. And I don't come at this as somebody who's like, oh, I've like unlocked all my greater internal pleasures. Like, this is an ongoing thing. And that's really important to realize. Just like I'm not a perfect anything else. Like, these are paths, but it's like really freaking fun. And why not? It's like getting to like learn a new sport or a new skill. Like, the journey is what's fun in it, not just the part where you've mastered something. Like, I doubt that I ever will. Just encouragement to dive in and like say yes to things and see where that leads.
Well, and I'm excited because I'm going to be on your podcast in a few weeks.
Yes, on Carnal Theory.
Yeah. And so the podcast is the same mission as My Sex Bio, right? I mean, to really help.
It's just a podcast arm for us. Yeah.
Yeah. But I love that. I mean, I think that we're both looking at it, starting with the individual, but how it does connect to really the collective care, and like you said, peace. And for me, I talk about it a lot in terms of also like resilience, in part because pleasure has been so associated with being lavish and gluttonous and lazy. And I recognize it's something to have balance with. I mean, like all things in life, we need balance, and it can be easy to always be chasing pleasure, but I do think that it's just the fact that people don't, they don't really know that there's different types of pleasure that they deserve, that it isn't just about sex. It's really, it's become one of those things where I'm so happy that there are organizations like you that can keep with your podcast and your account to kind of keep talking about all the different ways that it can be in your life.
Thank you. Yeah. Well, and it's appreciated to be able to collaborate with people and have partners who are experts in a wide variety of disciplines. And that's also what's cool and needed is an understanding that sex, of what you just said, like sex has a very expansive definition.
Yeah.
And it means what you want it to mean. Sex does not mean penetration explicitly. Sex does not mean male identifying and female identifying coming. Like sex is touch. Sex is communication. Sex is whatever like gets you off or you find pleasurable. And so also expanding the definition of sex itself, and to understand that it is not just porn. It is not something that that you even have to participate in. Your sexuality, your sexual self might not enjoy or encompass what mainstream porn guides us to believe is what we are all supposed to want. Like that's like sex is inclusive and expansive and what you want it to be. And it's finding your pleasure in that if that's what you want. And that's also really important because that's your biography. Understanding that you command your biography. You write what you want your sexual biography to be, to not be, and what goals you want to set within it and explore. It's yours.
Never too late. It's never too late to really kind of rewrite your narrative, because even though maybe I would say most everybody has some sort of story from their past of shame or where they learned that to feel ashamed, but it's never too late to undo that and say that that's not my truth. That isn't my narrative. That isn't my biography. That's just part of the messages that we were fed. But I'm not going to buy in. Like my biography says I'm not buying into that. And I want to find the other people who get that. And we can all really understand that without judgment together.
Yes.
I like it. So LF Style Writer says sex is communication written in the body. Ooh.
I like that.
Are you a writer? I feel like that's very poetic. I like the sounds of that.
Indeed.
Yeah. And I think also I often just differentiate between like eroticism and sex, because while sex can be very erotic, it can also sometimes be, really just a kind of a behavior between two animals, which there's nothing wrong with that too. I mean, sometimes I joke that sometimes you just need McDonald's sex. You just sort of need to get in and out through the drive-through. It doesn't maybe need to be all that erotic, but that's fine too, as long as it's two consenting people. Not that consent always means it's pleasurable, but it's a start.
That's a great distinction. That's a great point to make. Yeah, and obviously there's a whole other line of conversation to go down, the need of consent and having honest, understood conversation of what consent means. It's a huge travesty to our society as a whole that consent isn't a core piece of our education. Like even if we continued to not have medically accurate sex education, which is not mandated in many states in the United States alone, if we just were taught consent, not even sexual consent specifically, but consent in general, to touch, to engagements between one another, think of the positivity increase that we would have, and understanding, and a lessening of confusion and animosity between one another, because we would understand that, like, no doesn't mean you're a terrible person, or F you, or I'm now mad at you. No just means no. Just, it's not a big deal. Like, that the catchphrase "no means no," I think sometimes, like, no means no. Well, like, it just means no. It doesn't mean anything other than that. And if that was drilled into our heads, instead of, like, no means a slap across the face, or no means I'm publicly shamed.
Let's add that to the list of things that are associated as dirty words that are not dirty words. And I think the more confident you are in your no's, the more also empowered you can feel in your yeses, because both of them are coming from your own truth, not being swayed or pressured or worried that you're not going to please somebody else. You know what? You're gonna not please other people sometimes, so just own it. And I also tell my clients, like, model after anybody else that has said no to you. I mean, how did they go about doing it in a way that you could hear them? Maybe it was like, "Thanks so much, but I'm gonna, it's not gonna work out for me. I'm gonna say no now, maybe later." I mean, there's all sorts of ways to own your no and own your yes. And but the two go hand in hand. I think, like, kind of the more that we are feeling liberated in our no, the more that we are in our yes.
Yeah, we talk about in one of our classes, Unlocking Pleasure Through the Erotic Blueprints, we talk about hell yeses and hell nos, and how when you have identified your hell yeses and hell nos, you can communicate those to your partner. Because you know them. When you don't know something about yourself, it's just more difficult to put the words. You know internally, but you don't have you practice these things. And it's much easier.
And then there's also sort of the in the middle where you're like, I don't know if that's a yes or no, but I trust
exactly.
Let's explore it, and let's be open-minded too.
We talk about that too. The
where,
maybes.
I mean, one of the things I talk about in my book is how, like, people want these mind-blowing orgasms or just this sacred intimacy, but they actually, like, don't know how to find pleasure in, like, eating dessert because they feel guilty, or dancing because they feel self-conscious, or just, some of these ways in which it's, like, harder to have the building blocks. And so, like, if you can't even say, like, no, I don't want to eat at that French restaurant tonight, I don't like French food, how are you going to be able to in the bedroom be like, I don't like when you're fingering me, that it hurts in this position, and you do it in this position. So I think a lot of it too just starts with, like, are you able to really speak and articulate and not worry about disappointing other people in just other day-to-day things. I feel like we could just go on and on about some of the, I mean, a lot of it is about some of the barriers that get in our way of really fully, like, expressing our bodies and our sexual health. But I know that both of our work also, and the stuff that we put on Instagram, is a lot about just, like, well, once you get past those barriers, how can you, like, really feel all the more enlivened and step into this life force energy? How can this life force energy enhance your life? And so that's the positive, even though we've been talking about some of the unfortunate setbacks. I mean, I think that we are living expressions that healing is always possible.
Yes. And to get there, to heal, one of the ways is through reflection. For some people, that's through talking in community. For some people, it's writing one-on-one. And for others, it's reading resources and reflecting that way. So find the medium that fits you. That part of our mission is providing education on a multitude of mediums. You can listen to us, watch us. We provide writing prompts, classes. So find the medium that resonates with you, how you reflect. We talk about, like, learning styles, but, like, what is your reflection style? And then explore that. And find out, write your biography.
We all have different emotional styles, different communication styles, different reflection styles. I mean, we're not like these kind of robots that just fit into these little boxes. And I think, maybe one last thing I'll say too is, I mean, that idea that we are supposed to be in this one box as sexual being, and it is supposed to be about performative sort of aspects. I mean, there's all the othering and the marginalization of, you know, bodies and expression of bodies outside of just that kind of the heteronormative kind of white youthful look is something I think that I know we're both also trying to break down.
Yep.
So yeah, maybe we'll have to do this again sometime, you know, because we could have gone down about 5 different other avenues,
For sure.
but
For sure. Yeah.
all right.
See you on Carnal Theory. Thank you, Rachel. Be well. Bye, everyone.